unlimited drama series.
My wife's priorities. First, her friends. Second, her Instagram. Third, me, somewhere between the houseplants and the cat we don't have. I'm Trent Ardle, 39 years old, structural engineer for Gulf Coast Development. I spend my days calculating load-bearing capacities and stress points in concrete and steel. Turns out those skills transfer pretty well to analyzing the structural integrity of a marriage. The crack in mine started showing 3 months ago. "Trent, you're being ridiculous," Alma said, standing in our hallway, with her hands on her hips. She wore that navy blazer she reserved for important court appearances and arguments with me. "My friends matter more than your petty complaints about dinner plans." I was loading the dishwasher, something she'd promised to do before heading to her law office that morning. The promise lasted about as long as her morning coffee. "Petty complaints," I repeated, scraping dried pasta off a plate. "Right. Don't use that tone with me." I turned around, dish towel in hand. Alma stood there looking like she was cross-examining a hostile witness. Her auburn hair was pulled back in that severe bun she thought made her look professional. It just made her look angry. "What tone would you prefer? Grateful? Should I thank you for canceling our anniversary dinner so you could go to Rowan's housewarming party?" "Rowan's my colleague. This is important for my career." "Rowan Carrick is a lot of things, but I'm pretty sure important for your career isn't one of them." Her face flushed. "You don't understand professional relationships." "I understand them fine. What I don't understand is why professional relationships require you to stay out until 2 in the morning, texting about how misunderstood you are." That hit home. I could see it in the way her shoulders tensed. "I don't know what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You spend more time talking to Rowan than you do talking to me. You dress up for office parties like you're going to the Met Gala. And last week, you forgot we had dinner plans 3 times. Those were work emergencies?" "Right. Work emergencies that required you to buy new lingerie." The silence stretched between us like a suspension cable under too much weight. I could practically see the stress fractures forming. "My friends matter more than you think they do," she said finally. "All right." That one word seemed to catch her off guard. She'd been building up to a fight, and I'd just deflated her argument with 2 syllables. "All right? All right. Your friends matter more. Message received." I turned back to the dishwasher. Behind me, I heard her heels clicking against the hardwood floor as she headed for the front door. "I'm staying at Sophie's tonight," she called over her shoulder. "We have an early strategy session tomorrow." The door slammed. I finished loading the dishwasher, started it up, and poured myself a glass of bourbon. Then I sat down at the kitchen table with Alma's iPad, which she'd left charging next to the fruit bowl. She never remembered to log out of her email. The first thing I found was a receipt confirmation from the Grandview Resort. Presidential suite, 2 nights, charged to a credit card I didn't recognize. The name on the reservation wasn't Alma's, it was Rowan Carrick's. I took a sip of bourbon and clicked on Alma's text messages. The thread with Rowan went back 6 months. 6 months of, "You understand me like nobody else," and "I can't wait to see you," and "Last night was incredible." There were photos, not the kind you send to colleagues. I scrolled through the messages, my engineering mind cataloging evidence like I was documenting structural defects in a building. The pattern was clear. Late-night conversations that started professional and turned personal. Complaints about me that grew more detailed and more cruel. Plans for meetings that had nothing to do with legal work. And then, 3 weeks ago, booked our weekend, same sweet as last time. Can't wait to have you all to myself. I set down the iPad and finished my bourbon. My sister Macy always said I was too calm for my own good. You need to get angry sometimes, Trent. Normal people get angry. But anger was just stress applied to a structure. Apply it wrong, and everything collapses. Apply it right, and you can bring down exactly what you want to bring down. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found Doug Morrison, my old boss from the engineering firm. Doug had retired 2 years ago and started a private investigation business. He specialized in insurance fraud and background checks, but he owed me a favor from when I'd helped him prove his ex-wife was hiding assets. "Doug, it's Trent. I need some help with a project." What kind of project? The kind that requires documentation and witnesses. There was a pause. Personal or professional? Both. I'll be right over. While I waited for Doug, I did what I do best. I analyzed the problem. Alma thought she was being clever. She thought I was too boring, too predictable, too focused on my work to notice what was happening right under my nose. She'd built her affair like a house of cards, assuming the foundation would never be tested. She was wrong about that. Doug arrived 20 minutes later with a laptop bag and a thermos of coffee. He was 55, built like a retired cop because he was one, and he had the kind of mustache that went out of style in 1987, but somehow worked on him. "Show me what you've got," he said, settling into the chair across from me. I walked him through the evidence, the hotel receipts, the text messages, the photos, the credit card statements I'd found in Alma's email. Doug took notes in a small spiral notebook, occasionally asking questions about dates and times. "How long has this been going on?" 6 months, maybe longer. The text thread goes back that far, but there might be more. "You want me to dig deeper?" "I want you to help me document everything. Legally. By the book." Doug looked up from his notebook. "You planning to file for divorce?" "I'm planning to make sure I have options." "What about the other guy? This Rowan character? What about him?" "You want me to look into him, too?" I thought about that. Rowan Carrick was one of those guys who looked good in expensive suits and had opinions about wine. He drove a BMW and wore his hair a little too long for a man pushing 40. Alma had introduced us at a firm Christmas party 2 years ago, back when I still thought he was just another lawyer with too much confidence and too little substance. "Yeah," I said, "look into him too." Doug closed his notebook. "This is going to take some time, and it's not going to be cheap." "How much time?" 2 weeks, maybe 3. Depends on how careful they've been. They haven't been careful at all. The sloppy ones are usually the easiest to document. After Doug left, I sat in the kitchen for a long time, thinking about stress points and load calculations. Every structure has a breaking point. The trick is finding it before the whole thing comes down on your head. I picked up Alma's iPad again and scrolled through her contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Cleo Marver, Rowan's girlfriend of 5 years. I'd met Cleo at the same Christmas party where I'd met Rowan. She was a graphic designer, quiet and observant, with dark hair and the kind of smile that suggested she was always thinking about something more interesting than whatever conversation she was stuck in. If anyone deserved to know what Rowan was doing with his spare time, it was Cleo. I composed a text message. "This is Trent Ardle, Alma's husband. We met at the Christmas party. I have something you need to see. Can we meet somewhere private?" I stared at the message for 5 minutes before hitting send. The response came back almost immediately. I was wondering when someone would finally reach out. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m., coffee shop on Maple Street. Come alone." I set the phone down and poured another bourbon. Cleo already knew. That changed everything. The coffee shop on Maple Street was one of those places that tried too hard to look casual. Exposed brick walls, mismatched furniture, and a chalkboard menu that took 10 minutes to decipher. I arrived 15 minutes early and claimed a table in the back corner, where we could talk without being overheard. Cleo walked in exactly at 2 o'clock. She looked different than I remembered from the Christmas party. Sharper somehow. She wore dark jeans and a gray sweater, and her hair was shorter, cut in a way that framed her face and made her look older than her 37 years. She spotted me immediately and walked over without stopping to order coffee. "You look like hell," she said, sitting down across from me. "Thanks. You look great." "I always look great when I'm planning revenge." That caught me off guard. I'd expected tears, maybe anger, possibly denial. I hadn't expected someone who looked like she'd been waiting for this conversation for months. "How long have you known?" "About Rowan and your wife?" 3 months? About you figuring it out? I've been waiting for you to put the pieces together since Christmas. Christmas was 2 years ago. Exactly. She leaned back in her chair. You want to know what I know, or do you want to keep pretending this is a friendly catch-up? I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots I'd taken of Alma's text messages. Cleo scrolled through them with the detached interest of someone reading a grocery list. These are from last week, she said. Yeah, I have ones from this morning. She pulled out her own phone and showed me a series of text messages between Rowan and someone listed in his contacts as A. Meeting you at the usual place. Can't wait to get you out of that dress. Bring the champagne. I have a surprise for you. Your husband is such a bore. Thank God I have you. I read through the messages twice. The usual place. That would be the Grandview Resort, presidential suite. They're there now, Cleo said. Now? Checked in this morning. They think they're being clever, booking under Rowan's name, paying with his credit card. They think nobody's paying attention. She was right. They weren't being clever at all. They were being sloppy and arrogant, which was worse. What do you want to do about it? I asked. I want to destroy them. The way she said it, calm and matter of fact, made me believe she could actually do it. I'm listening. They're planning to stay until tomorrow afternoon. Checkout is at 11. That gives us about 20 hours to put together a welcome party. What kind of welcome party? Cleo smiled, and for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt like I might actually enjoy what came next. The kind they'll never forget. We spent the next hour planning. Cleo had been documenting Rowan's affair for months, collecting evidence with the patience of someone who understood that revenge was a dish best served with proper documentation. She had photos, bank statements, credit card receipts, and a folder full of text messages that painted a clear picture of two people who thought they were smarter than everyone around them. The hotel staff knows them, she said. They've been going there for months, always the same suite, always acting like they're some kind of power couple. The concierge thinks it's romantic. What's the concierge's name? Sandy. Why? I'm going to make a reservation. I called the Grandview Resort from the coffee shop. Sandy answered on the second ring, and her voice had that practiced cheerfulness that hotel employees perfect over years of dealing with difficult guests. Grandview Resort, this is Sandy. How can I help you? I'd like to make a reservation for tonight. Presidential suite, if it's available. I'm sorry, sir, but the presidential suite is occupied tonight. We have other luxury suites available. Actually, I think there might be some confusion. My name is Trent Ardle. My wife Alma is in the presidential suite with her business partner, Rowan Carrick. They're expecting me. There was a pause. Oh, Mr. Ardell. Yes, Mr. Carrick mentioned you might be joining them. Let me just... Yes, I can have a key made for you right away. That's perfect. I'll be there around 7. Wonderful. And may I say, it's so nice when families can spend time together. Your wife and Mr. Carrick seem so happy. I hung up and looked at Cleo. We're in. Just like that? Hotel staff see what they want to see. Sandy thinks we're all one big happy family. What happens at 7? We introduce ourselves properly. The Grandview Resort was the kind of place that charged $500 a night and made you feel like you were getting a bargain. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and enough gold trim to make a casino jealous. The presidential suite was on the top floor, accessible only by a private elevator that required a special key card. Cleo and I rode up in silence. She'd changed into a black dress and heels, and she carried a leather portfolio that looked like it contained important business documents. I wore my best suit, the one I usually reserved for client meetings and funerals. You nervous? She asked as the elevator climbed. No, you? I've been looking forward to this for 3 months. The elevator stopped, and the doors opened directly into the suite's foyer. We could hear them before we saw them. Alma's laugh, high and musical, the kind she used when she wanted to sound sophisticated. Rowan's voice lower, saying something about wine pairings and weekend getaways. They were on the balcony, silhouetted against the sunset, sharing a bottle of champagne and feeding each other strawberries from a silver tray. Nothing says platonic business relationship like matching silk robes, I said quietly. Cleo opened her portfolio and pulled out a small digital camera. Smile, she whispered, and took 3 quick photos. We walked through the suite's living room, past the king-size bed with its rumpled sheets, past the bathroom where 2 sets of clothes were scattered on the floor, past the dining table where room service had left the remains of what looked like a very expensive dinner. The sliding door to the balcony was open. Alma and Rowan were so absorbed in each other that they didn't notice us until we were standing directly behind them. "Beautiful sunset," I said. Alma spun around so fast, she nearly knocked over her champagne glass. Rowan stood up, his silk robe falling open to reveal boxer shorts with little golf clubs on them. "Trent!" Alma's voice cracked on my name. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same question." Rowan stepped forward, trying to look authoritative despite the golf club boxers. "Now see here, Ardell." "Sit down, Rowan." Something in my voice made him actually do it. Cleo moved to stand beside me, her portfolio open. "Hello, darling," she said to Rowan. "Miss me?" The look on Rowan's face was worth every uncomfortable moment of the last 3 months. He went pale, then red, then pale again.
Don't leave. Let me explain.
Explain a shade I don't own.
Watch more on Grammarly.com.
"Cleo, I can explain." "I'm sure you can. You always were good with words." She pulled out a thick stack of papers. "I brought some reading material. Bank statements, credit card receipts, hotel reservations going back 8 months. Would you like me to read them out loud?" Alma found her voice. "This is harassment. I'm calling hotel security." "Go ahead," I said. "Ask them about the reservation. Ask Sandy how she thinks we're all one big happy family." Alma's hand froze halfway to the phone. Cleo continued pulling documents from her portfolio. "Phone records showing 237 calls between you and Rowan in the last 6 months. Text messages, photos." She held up a printed screenshot of one of Alma's more revealing selfies. "This one's my personal favorite. Very professional." Rowan tried to stand up again. "Look, we can work this out." "Sit down." He sat. I walked over to the champagne bucket and picked up the bottle. Dom Perignon, 2015. Probably cost more than most people spend on groceries in a month. "Nice choice," I said. "Who's paying for this? You, Rowan? Or is this on the firm's expense account?" "That's none of your business." "Actually, it is." Cleo pulled out another document. "Expense reports from Carrick and Associates." Funny thing about expense reports, they're supposed to be for business expenses. I set the champagne bottle back in the ice bucket. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to pack your things. You're going to check out. And you're going to go home and think very carefully about your choices." "You can't make us leave," Alma said. "This is our room." "Actually, it's Rowan's room. Paid for with Rowan's credit card. Which means Rowan gets to decide who stays and who goes." I looked at him. "What's it going to be, Rowan? You want to explain to hotel security why you're sharing a romantic suite with a married woman? You want me to call your senior partner and ask about the firm's policy on expense account fraud?" Rowan looked like he was going to be sick. "We'll leave," he said quietly. Smart choice. It took them 20 minutes to pack. 20 minutes of awkward silence, broken only by the sound of zippers and drawers slamming shut. Alma tried to argue twice, but one look at the evidence in Cleo's portfolio shut her up. When they were ready to go, suitcases in hand and dignity in tatters, I walked them to the elevator. "One more thing," I said, handing Alma an envelope. "Separation papers, effective immediately." "Trent, we can talk about this." "No, we can't." The elevator doors opened. Alma and Rowan stepped inside, and I could see other hotel guests in the hallway, drawn by the commotion, watching with the kind of fascination people reserve for car accidents and public meltdowns. "Have a nice evening," I said as the doors closed. Cleo and I stood in the hallway for a moment, listening to the elevator descend. "That was easier than I expected," she said. "The night's not over yet." "What do you mean?" I smiled. "I paid for the room until tomorrow. Seems like a waste not to use it." We went back into the suite. Cleo poured herself a glass of champagne and walked out onto the balcony. "You know this isn't finished," she said. "They're going to fight back. Let them try." Alma's a lawyer. She knows how to make things difficult. Alma's a lawyer who just got caught committing expense account fraud with her boss's colleague. She's got bigger problems than making things difficult for me. Cleo raised her glass. "To bigger problems? To bigger problems?" We clinked glasses and watched the sun finish setting over the Gulf Coast. In the distance, The city lights were starting to come on, and somewhere down there, Alma and Rowan were trying to figure out how their perfect plan had fallen apart so quickly. They had no idea how much worse it was going to get. I woke up the next morning in my own bed, alone, with the kind of clarity that comes from finally understanding the scope of a problem. Alma hadn't come home. Her car wasn't in the driveway, and her phone went straight to voicemail. Fine by me. I made coffee, scrambled some eggs, and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and a legal pad. If you're going to dismantle someone's life, you need a plan. You need to think 3 steps ahead and document everything. The first step was changing the locks. I called the locksmith and had them come out that afternoon. While I waited, I went through the house and packed up Alma's belongings. Not vindictively, not angrily, just methodically. Clothes in boxes, toiletries in bags, books and personal items wrapped in newspaper, like I was helping her move. Because I was. The locksmith was a guy named Pete, who'd been in business for 30 years and had seen enough domestic situations to know when not to ask questions. He changed the front door, the back door, and the garage door opener, and gave me 3 sets of new keys. You want me to put the old locks in a box for you? He asked. Throw them away. You got it. While Pete worked on the locks, I called my bank and removed Alma from our joint checking and savings accounts. Then I called the insurance company and took her off the auto policy. Then I called the credit card companies and canceled the cards that were in both our names. It was amazing how easy it was to untangle a marriage when you approached it like an engineering problem. Remove the shared resources, eliminate the structural dependencies, and suddenly you're dealing with 2 separate entities instead of one unstable system. By the time I finished with the financial stuff, Pete was done with the locks. I paid him in cash and stacked Alma's boxes by the front door. Then I called Doug. How's the investigation going? Better than expected. Your wife and her boyfriend have been very busy. Define busy. 3 different hotels over the last 8 months, always paying cash or using Rowan's credit card. Always booking suites, always ordering room service, always making a scene in the lobby about how important they are. Making a scene? Hotel staff remember them. Apparently, your wife likes to send food back to the kitchen and complain about thread counts. Rowan tips big, but treats the staff like servants. What else? Rowan's got some interesting financial arrangements. His law firm credit card has been used for a lot of non-business expenses. Dinners, flowers, jewelry. His senior partner might be very interested to know where the money's going. Who's his senior partner? Margaret Whitfield. She's been practicing law since before Rowan was born, and she's got a reputation for not tolerating nonsense. I wrote down the name. What about Alma's firm? That's where it gets interesting. Alma's been billing hours for meetings that never happened. Client conferences that were actually hotel visits. Research time that was actually shopping trips. How do you know? Credit card timestamps, hotel security footage, and a very helpful paralegal who doesn't like your wife very much. Which paralegal? Jennifer Martinez. She's been documenting Alma's absences for months, apparently waiting for someone to ask the right questions. I added Jennifer's name to my list. What's the next step? That depends on how far you want to take this. How far can we take it? Alma could lose her job. Rowan could lose his job. They could both face disciplinary action from the State Bar Association. And that's just the professional stuff. What about the personal stuff? Well, Rowan's been lying to Cleo for months. Alma's been lying to you. They've been lying to their friends, their families, their colleagues. Once word gets out, their social circle is going to implode. When does word get out? That's up to you. I thought about it. Alma had spent months building her affair, layer by layer, lie by lie. She'd been careful to maintain her reputation while destroying our marriage. She'd calculated the risks and decided I was too boring, too predictable, too focused on my work to fight back. Time to show her how wrong she was. Let's start with their employers, I said. Doug chuckled. I was hoping you'd say that. The first call was to Margaret Whitfield. Her secretary put me through immediately, which told me that Doug had already laid the groundwork. Mr. Ardell, this is Margaret Whitfield. I understand you have some concerns about one of my associates. I have documentation of expense account fraud. I see. Can you be more specific? I walked her through the credit card statements, the hotel receipts, the restaurant bills that had been charged to the firm but were clearly personal expenses. Margaret listened without interrupting, occasionally asking for dates or dollar amounts. How long has this been going on? She asked when I finished. At least 8 months, possibly longer. And you have documentation of all of this? Receipts, credit card statements, hotel security footage, witness statements. I'll need to see everything. I can have it to you by tomorrow morning. Good. Mr. Ardell, I want you to know that Carrick and Associates has a zero-tolerance policy for this kind of behavior. If what you're telling me is accurate, Mr. Carrick's employment will be terminated immediately. What about the money he's stolen? He'll be required to pay back every penny, plus interest and penalties. And depending on the amount involved, we may pursue criminal charges. I hung up feeling like I'd just lit the first fuse on a very large fireworks display. The second call was to Alma's boss, Richard Hartley. Richard was harder to reach than Margaret, but his paralegal Jennifer Martinez was very helpful. Mr. Ardell, I've been wondering when someone would call. About Alma? About Alma's billing practices, and her attendance record, and her general attitude toward actually doing her job. How bad is it? She's billed 40 hours of client work in the last 2 weeks. I can account for maybe 10 hours of actual work. What about the other 30? Shopping, lunches, hotel visits, and what she calls client development meetings that seem to involve a lot of champagne and very little development. Can you document that? I've been documenting it for months. I was just waiting for someone in authority to ask the right questions. I'm asking. Then you'll have a full report by tomorrow morning. The third call was to my sister Macy. Macy worked as a bartender at Fitzgerald's, the kind of upscale place where lawyers and business people went to see and be seen. She heard all the gossip and remembered all the details, and she'd never liked Alma. It's about time, she said when I told her what was happening. About time for what? About time you figured out what everyone else already knew. Everyone else? Trent, they've been flaunting this thing for months. Coming into Fitzgerald's together, sitting in corner booths, acting like they're some kind of power couple. Half the legal community knows about it. Why didn't anyone tell me? What were we supposed to say? Hey, Trent, your wife's cheating on you with that pompous idiot from Carrick and Associates? You would have asked for proof, and then you would have tried to work things out, and then you would have spent the next 6 months making excuses for her. She was right. I would have. What's the word around town? About Alma and Rowan? People think it's tacky, but not surprising. About you? People are wondering when you're going to do something about it. I'm doing something about it now. Good. What do you need from me? Information. Who's talking? What are they saying? How far has the gossip spread? I'll make some calls. By 6 o'clock, I had a complete picture of the situation. Alma and Rowan thought they were being discreet, but they'd actually created a public spectacle that half the city was talking about. Their employers were furious, their colleagues were embarrassed, and their friends were starting to distance themselves. The house felt different with the new locks and Alma's belongings gone. Quieter, but not empty. More like a space that was finally being used for its intended purpose. I made dinner, poured a glass of wine, and sat down to plan the next phase. My phone rang at 8:30. Unknown number. Hello? You son of a... Rowan's voice, angry and panicked. Evening, Rowan. How was your day? You know exactly how my day was. Margaret fired me. She wants me to pay back $12,000. She's talking about criminal charges. That's unfortunate. You can't do this to me. I didn't do anything to you. You did it to yourself. This is harassment. No, this is documentation. There's a difference. I'll sue you for defamation. With what lawyer? And what money? There was a long pause. What do you want? I want you to stay away from my wife. She's not your wife anymore. She left you. Where is she? somewhere you'll never find her. Rowan, listen to me very carefully. Alma is still legally my wife. The separation papers I gave her yesterday don't change that. And right now, she's in a lot of trouble with her employer, her colleagues, and the State Bar Association. If she's smart, she'll come home and try to work things out. If she's not smart, she'll keep running around with a disgraced ex-lawyer who can't even pay his own bills. You don't know what you're talking about. I know exactly what I'm talking about. I know about the expense account fraud. I know about the billing irregularities. I know about the hotel receipts and the restaurant bills and the jewelry purchases. I know about all of it, Rowan, and so do your former employers. You're going to regret this. The only thing I regret is not doing it sooner. He hung up. I finished my wine and went to bed early. Tomorrow was going to be a busy day. The next morning brought 3 phone calls that changed everything. The first was from Alma. Trent, we need to talk. Her voice sounded different, smaller somehow, less confident. About what? About working things out, about saving our marriage. I almost laughed. Our marriage? The one you've been systematically destroying for the last 8 months? I made mistakes. You made choices. Please, can we meet somewhere just to talk? Where are you staying? With Sophie. Sophie Chen was Alma's best friend from law school. The kind of person who thought loyalty meant helping you cover up your mistakes instead of helping you avoid them.